You've heard the stories, I'm sure, that hill tribe tourism is just exploitation and that these hill tribe tourism villages are really only human zoos. But let me share with you a different story based on our own personal experience. Because there's not only one way of seeing and perceiving hill tribe tourism. We spent years visiting Bantong Luang. This was a hill tribe tourism village based near Chiang Mai. Unfortunately, since COVID, it hasn't reopened, or at least not to the same as it used to be. And during the time that we visited this village and built really precious friendships, lovely relationships with some of the people, we came to realize that this notion of a hill tribe tourism village being like a human zoo comes from a very privileged Western perspective that's largely based on what tourists think and perceive, even though they have no real understanding of the background or the culture or the lifestyle circumstances of a lot of the people that live in these villages. And in this video, I'd like to share with you some of our experiences that have been truly wonderful. Before we went to Bantong Luang, I'd had quite a lot of experience visiting hill tribe villages scattered around the north of Thailand with my work as a photographer and videographer. But I'd never actually visited a tourism village. But because we had a number of people who were wanting to book photography workshops with us, asking for opportunities to be able to photograph the hill tribe people, we thought we'd go along and just check out Bantong Luang, see what this hill tribe tourism village was all about. And from our very first visit, we really fell in love, not so much with the place, but with a lot of the people there. Right from the start, right from the very beginning, the first time we visited, we started to build really lovely relationships with some of the people. And sure, hill tribe villages are not necessarily an ideal way for people to live, but you've got to consider the alternatives. Many of these people are refugees. They've been pushed out of their homes in neighbouring countries. And quite frankly, being in a tourism village is a far better opportunity than working construction or being in a factory or heading down to Bangkok or Pattaya or Phuket for sex work, which is a real option for a lot of these people that come from a background of having so little. And while some of these people have come as refugees into Thailand, others of them live in Thailand and working in the hill tribe village, in the tourism village of Bantong Luang, was their day job. As we entered the village, we came through into the area where the Karen people were, and there was always this one lovely Karen grandma sitting there, usually doing a weaving, sometimes sitting there reading. She would quite often have a book open in front of her, but she always had the most lovely, big, welcoming smile on her face. So we engaged with her, we got to know her, and always loved stopping for a chat. And then following through, the next group of houses were Lahu people. And this gentleman here was always a delight to photograph and interact with. He told me that he'd come from Laos, he'd fled his home country in the 1970s as it was being bombed by America's CIA for their secret war, which was apparently to repel the communist forces. And so a lot of these people fled into neighbouring Thailand. And he was always great to photograph. He'll either have his crossbow out and give you lessons on how to shoot a crossbow, or he'd be quite happy to pack his bong with a bit of tobacco and fire up his bong. And it was always great fun to watch him. And I would tell our customers, be ready. Once he's exhaled this huge amount of smoke, keep ready for a good photograph, because he will usually turn and smile with this huge grin on his face and look at the camera and tell you, oh, ho, ho, mau lao, which means I'm drunk already, because he'd just taken such a huge hit from his tobacco. So it was always, yeah, great fun and a real delight. And every now and again, I'd bring along a fresh pack of tobacco to give him. And then going further up, we would engage with a Hmong family, and these people were really lovely. They were very crafty. They were very productive in different ways. They were doing weaving, they were doing batik. And this one guy was a blacksmith, and he would make the different types of jewelry for each of the different hill tribes. I asked him one day what he was working on, and he was working on a piece for some of the Lahu people. So he'd learned during his time in the village what each of the different hill tribe groups that were there, the different ethnic groups, not only the Hmong, but he would make jewelry for each of these groups as they had a need. And then there was always Grandma doing her batik work. She was so focused and had such an incredibly steady hand that she would sit there for hours and hours and hours applying this wax with a special little tool, and quite often onto a fairly rough hemp fabric that then they would later process and dye and use as part of their decorative traditional costume. And one of the first times I was there, I noticed a photograph on the wall of their house. It was a picture of King Bhumibol and a few other people standing in an opium poppy field. And the lady pointed out one of the other men, and she said, "Oh, this is my father." I said, "Wow, this is amazing. Your father met the king." And she said, "Yeah, this is when the king was very proactive in helping the hill tribe people transition away from growing opium poppies and into growing other crops, such as coffee and vegetables." So it was a very proud moment for her to show off this photo of her father talking with the king and engaging with the head of the royal family in Thailand. Then the next group of people that we were engaged with were Kaior people. They're from Myanmar, they come from Burma, and most of them were women, quite a large number of younger women, but some older women as well that were there looking after them, I guess. There were not many men around. And one day I got into a really interesting conversation with this lady who I just always enjoyed talking to, but one day one of our customers was asking me to ask her questions about her background and her family, and she seemed to be quite relaxed about telling me, so I just continued chatting. Discovered that she was there with her two daughters that we knew and photographed quite often, and she also had two other sons that had passed away. She said her firstborn son had died within 3 weeks of being born. He'd had a temperature, he'd got sick with some sort of an infection, had a high temperature, and they could not get him to the nearest medical clinic in time, and he passed away on the way there. It was a 3-day walk from their village to the nearest medical clinic. And so that in itself is a pretty good reason to want to live in a tourism village in Thailand, because they were less than an hour away from the nearest medical care should they need it. And then being there, yeah, with two beautiful young adults, from what I know of stories from people who live over in Myanmar, the dangers, particularly after the rice has been harvested, the Burmese army, the Myanmar army, would come through and raid villages, quite often taking the younger people, killing some of the older people, and even doing such things, they'd steal the rice. I've even heard stories that they would shoot bullet holes into the cooking pots and pans. So even if the people had fled their village, they would burn the place down, but they would even put holes in the cooking utensils that wouldn't burn, so it would render them useless even if the people did return. Here's another reason that this lady with her two daughters feels a lot more secure and comfortable living in a hill tribe tourism village in Thailand. And I asked her about her husband, and yeah, her face dropped, and I thought, oh no, what have I done? And she continued talking. She said, oh, I went out hunting one day with a few friends. I know from other stories that I've heard that the hill tribe men will go out hunting in small groups for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, just into the local jungle to see what they can find. And she said their group never returned. So she has no idea what's happened to her husband or where he is, or even if he's alive or dead. So from that one conversation, it really helped me get a better perspective of this lady and her two daughters, why they are quite happy living in the security of a hill tribe tourism village in Thailand. And then just a little further up from their home, we made one of the most beautiful friendships with Malu and her mum and her family. But our first contact was with Malu. She connected with us straight away as a curious little 6-year-old with a gorgeous smile and a twinkle in her eye. It was very easy to make friends with Malu, and she loved being photographed, so we were quite happy to oblige. Over time, we built this friendship with her, and of course with her beautiful mum. Each time I'd go there, eventually, if Pansa was with me, at that point I would just lose her. She would be sitting down and chatting with Masu until we were finished, because they'd built up this lovely, lovely friendship. And over time, yeah, we were able to engage with them in some very special situations. This one time we turned up and here was Malu dressed in a t-shirt and jeans with no neck ring on and no scarf in her hair and no makeup. And it was just a little bit awkward. There was some sort of a tension there that we noticed. And so I just, normally I wouldn't ask, but I just squatted down next to Marlo and said, is it okay if I photograph you today? And she kind of nodded yes, that was okay. All the meantime, her mum was kind of looking a bit sort of unsettled. Her little sister had fallen down and banged her head, so she was screaming and crying. So it was a bit strange. Then we understood why Marley's neck ring had been taken off, and this is like, it's a continuous piece that's wrapped around their neck, so it's not something that they can take off easily. But they'd taken it off because Marley was going to be going to school, and she was going to Mahong Song to school, which is a good 5 or 6 hours drive away. This was unusual because Marley was always close to her mum or not far away playing with her friends, but certainly this was going to be a new experience, that she was going to be going up to Mahong Song for school. For me, I was excited because I'd often thought about her and her lack of education opportunities. She was such a smart, such a sharp little girl. So it was quite incredible to learn this day that here she was getting at least some sort of better educational opportunity than she had staying in the tourism village. And so we were really thankful that we'd turned up just at this right time, so we were able to say goodbye to her. Within 20 minutes, she'd gone with her dad and she was on her way. But we'd been able to make a donation towards her education. And so the next time I went back there, I took a bunch of prints of Malu and her family to give to them so that they would have some nice pictures of Malu while she was away. And shortly after this, we actually made a trip with a customer into Myanmar that had been planned by the customer, and we were going to be going to one of the Cayenne villages. So I said to Pansa, I said, we should take some photos along to show them, to say, hey, do you know these people? Sure enough, when we arrived in this village, we showed the photos to some of the people we met at the local store, and they said, oh yeah, her dad lives just up here. She was born in this village. So Malu's mum, had been born in this village, and this couple took us up to meet her dad. And so here we are with her dad in the village, and sort of being in this village was another real eye-opener. It was a long way from anywhere. So the road into this village was a real mess. It was being worked on, it was under construction, but we learned from the people in the village that up until recently, that had no road to the village and no electricity in the village, and they still had no water, running water in the village. The only reason they were getting a road and electricity is because Aung San Suu Kyi had been there, and she had said this village must have proper roading and electricity. So this was the only reason. If she hadn't visited, they would still be traipsing a dirt road down to the nearest village and still have no electricity. It was February, we were there during the dry season, and the place was just bare and dusty. It was a real dust bowl. There was nothing growing in the fields, and it was hot and dry. We met one young lady who took us for a walk. She said, oh, do you want to come and see where we take a wash? And I thought, oh, okay. She walked us up this hill, and then got to the top of the hill. We were able to look down to this muddy pond on the other side that was quite a long way down. We didn't walk down because it was quite hot, but this was their bathing facilities for the whole village. It was a tough life for sure. It was a really challenging situation. I don't think they got many tourists out there because it was well off the beaten path. but we were certainly made to feel very welcome and we were very included. There was some special ceremony, some sort of celebration going on this day. I don't know what it was for, but there was a lot of food being prepared. There was a lot of alcohol being consumed. There was also a lot of music being made, and this was just such a delight to be a part of this during our visit to this distant village in Myanmar. So there's a few stories from our experiences of visiting tourism villages in Thailand. So I hope you'll be encouraged to not avoid them, but go and visit and engage with the people. Many times we'd go to the village and we'd see tour groups there, and their guides were not really interacting with the people other than maybe asking them a few questions about their culture, but they certainly weren't looking to really ask about their lives or who they were or what they're doing. So if you go to a village, do your best to engage. Show an interest in who these people are and what they're doing and about their culture. Try and avoid topics like politics or anything that might be a bit negative. And yeah, do your best to engage. Some of them will speak some English or some other languages, but if you put your mind to it, you can really work to communicate with them in some form or another. They are probably way more used to it than you are. So yeah, pay attention, do some good listening and read the body language and just engage and have some fun relating to these people. And always approach it as a learning experience. Wear a smile on your face and of course be respectful. And spend a little money. They've always got something that they've created, usually some fabric. The women are always weaving. So buy something to take home. Scarves and bags are really, really easy things to pack when you're traveling. They're lightweight and you can buy something that's one of a kind and handmade and unique. And if you think that you might like to bargain them down in price, the first thing I usually do is ask them, how long did it take you to make this? And then calculate whether you want to actually give them a little bit more than what they're asking, because they're usually selling things way underpriced. And if you're feeling particularly generous, ask if you can make a donation to the education of their children or towards their healthcare. And even though there are still traditional hill tribe villages in Thailand that are genuine, that are not set up for tourists, you can get to these villages, but they're usually deep in the mountains and take a long time over rough roads to get there. So engaging in ethical hill tribe tourism in a touristic village environment is often the best way to be able to learn about these people and certainly to engage with them. We've got a good friend in Thailand here whose parents came to visit a number of years ago, and he asked us if we would do a workshop with them, and we said, sure. We discovered that they'd already been out to Bantong Luang village, so we didn't take them there. We took them into Chiang Mai. But during the day, we were talking about Bantong Luang, and Carol said to us, this was completely different from our experience of going to this hill tribe tourism village. Why is it different from your experience? And I said, well, because we engage with people, and they actually asked us to take us back to the village to help them really have a different experience and connect with it, and they thoroughly enjoyed it. They said it was a night and day difference between going there with a regular tour and not communicating with the people, and going with us and being able to communicate and engage with the people and get to know them and have a completely different hill tribe tourism experience. So I hope you'll be encouraged to think of these villages as other than human zoos, because they're full of beautiful people that have real lives and really amazing stories. So please don't shy away from visiting these villages. And if you'd like to learn some more about our experiences here in Thailand with the hill tribe peoples, check out this playlist next. Thanks very much for watching.